license in order to even possess this material. And I think that the site's pretty ideally suited for it. It's large enough, and it's pretty desolate out there. There's not a lot of traffic that goes by, and you wouldn't even see my operation from the road. Nobody would even know it's there. So that's pretty much it. The busy time for me would be fireworks generally, well, they're all imported from China. There's very little made in the U.S. any longer. So somewhere in February or April, the material arrives from the Orient. And then we immediately start selling to people. They're anxious to get their supplies in. And most of the material is gone, obviously, by the 4th of July. Are there any questions?
As far as you're just trying to judge traffic flow and your target market, you mentioned in some of your documentation that you had participated in, special events. What about out of season events? Do you have a feel for how much business you would be doing? Or, somebody's paying for the Royals every week, and
Oh, absolutely. That's probably
non 4th of July events is what I'm thinking of. Is that any of your market? Or
yes, it would be, but that's relatively small. That might be 15% of the total business is done other than for the 4th of July season. There's a little bit around Christmas time, Labor Day, Memorial Day, that sort of thing.
What kind of buildings would your product be stored in?
Okay, they'll be stored in what are 40-foot ocean shipping containers. I think you're all pretty familiar with those. They're ATF approved. They're pretty strict on their regulations, how they want it stored for theft resistance and so forth. So we'll be complying with that. They're pretty secure. I mean, they have two high security locks that ATF requires, and then I like to keep a third lock on there myself, just because it doesn't hurt to have more locks on there.
Bill, I understand that your containers are going to be off the road quite a ways.
Yes, sir, that's correct. You won't even be able to see them.
So pretty much out toward the middle of the property or back a little farther possibly.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
do you get off the shelf containers and then do whatever the ATF wants you to do to them? As I was skimming through the ATF material, they want certain gauge. Is your standard shipping container that I can go buy up in North Kansas City and have dropped on my property? Is it the proper gauge? Do you have to alter an off-the-shelf container to make it compliant, or do you buy them compliant and have them?
No, they're not actually compliant when we buy them. They have to be lined with non-sparking material,
Right.
and the proper locks put on.
Okay, and so you'll do that work, I presume, or somebody for you.
Yes, sir. They're already that way.
Okay. And then at what point does either the state or the ATF come back and basically give you a occupancy permit, so to speak?
Yeah. ATF comes out and inspects your magazines. If you were to put a new one in service, they come back out every time. So before they give you the federal license to deal in this material, they've already done all their due diligence.
And then once you have your permit you get one from the Kansas Fire Marshal, right? Also, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So with both those two overseeing agencies, what is your ongoing relationship with them? Do they come every year? Do they come randomly? How do they do their ongoing inspections? Take, for example, if you added an additional magazine, is it on your initiative that say, hey,
Yes, we would call the ATF and start the ball rolling with them and say we'd like to put an additional magazine in service, they call it.
Okay.
and they would want to know all the particulars of the construction of it. And they would come out and they actually do a GPS location and put a magazine number on it.
Okay. And do they come after that? Do they come with regular inspections or?
It's when your license is up for renewal in 3 years, or at any time in the interim if they so deem that.
So they have you on the crux of my question was they have you on a 3-year cycle.
That's correct. Now the state, I'm not sure of. Because in order for me to submit that paperwork to the state, I have to have your gentleman's okay to do that.
Understood.
You anticipate having more than 4 magazines?
It's possible I might have 1 or 2 more, but that's not because I'll have more material. That would be just to spread it out more. It makes it easier for me to fill an order because when it comes in from China, it's packed in that container. And obviously you can't get to anything up in the front of it. So we kind of like to spread it out, just makes our life easier.
So when you get it, the whole container is full of fireworks, and then you put it in different containers.
Yes,
Are the containers ventilated?
yes, they are.
What happened in the case of a fire?
You leave it alone.
I seen where you said you would train the fire department.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And not in just handling this, but if they would, if your fire department would want to shoot their own show, we can certainly provide the material to them and the training to do that.
Now, the gate access to your place, will it be locked all the time?
Yes, sir.
So the fire department would have no way of getting in there in the first place, right?
Well, I can either give them
Yeah,
the
just
key to
leave
the
it
gate
alone.
lock, or we can put one of those locking,
Knox box. Like a
well,
Knox box?
it's that little clip thing that goes on some of the gates where they cut to get in.
Oh, okay.
So that could
Yeah.
be between you and our fire supervisor.
Yes, sir. I wouldn't want to use a lockbox with a key out there because
Well, I
somebody
said
could
Knox
break into that
box.
and steal
The
it.
Knox box is what's on the outside of a building. It has a skeleton key that the fire department has.
Oh,
It has something inside in the box to allow
Okay.
them access to the building. So that's for buildings.
okay. That would be up to you if you want that. I would prefer just to give the fire department the key to the gate. Because that way there's no problem with somebody stealing that key, breaking into that box and getting the key.
I would say depending on the gate, it probably wouldn't slow them down.
And the whole property is fenced, right?
Yes. I think my neighbor to the the west of me is replacing the fence. He wants to run cattle on it. So he's putting in a new fence.
I live pretty close to there, so I drove by and I didn't think I saw any gaps, but just wanted to make sure.
Well, we have the fence down right now on the Yankee Road so the farmers can get his combine in and out of there. But as soon as he's done, we're going to take that and put a double gate in.
Are you putting concrete pads down to set these on, or are you just setting them on gravel?
They're just sitting on the ground, and we'll be putting gravel around them. That's an ATF regulation.
To build that area up?
Well, no, it's mostly to prevent any kind of fire from getting to it.
See,
If you would have a grass fire,
sure.
we keep it mowed, obviously, but they require like an 18-inch amount of gravel before it gets to the magazine.
I did see something, I don't know if it was Kansas or ATF, that essentially said it needed to stay dry. I mean, it couldn't have a negative slope. But I don't remember where I read that.
Yeah.
It does say it has to be sloped away. You're correct for drainage.
Right.
Any other questions before we move on to Darren's report?
Can lightning set them fireworks off by hitting one of them sea containers?
I suppose that's possible.
I didn't know if they had to be grounded or.
No, that's not a requirement.
I
Really?
didn't know. I figured they'd have to be grounded. I didn't.
Well, they're sitting directly on the ground.
On the ground.
Right.
I don't think you'd want to put a lightning rod.
No, it'd be a ground rod.
Static
About
electric-
2 feet in the ground.
Static electricity would be what would concern me.
Oh, well, you usually touch the container before you go in. That's good practice, the metal part of it.
Right, before you touch a computer, you're supposed to touch metal.
Right.
So, there's no more questions.
Do you collect sales tax when you sell them?
In some cases, yes. If somebody was to, it depends on how the fireworks person that's shooting the show that would be buying them for me, how they, if they have a tax number. Most shows are, you sell a service to shoot a show. In that case, the product's never been taxed, so I would have to charge them tax on that. If they have a sales tax number for resale, if they're a fireworks dealer, then they would give me the resale certificate.
I'll get to the public soon. It's after we hear from Darren. So, thank you. Anyone else from the board before we hear from Darren? Questions? We lost Darren.
Darren,
He's in there trying to get us
Trying to get
sound.
sound.
Trying to get sound.
still working on the sound.
All right. You want to give us your finding or your report, and we'll also talk about the
Thank you all.
Thank you.
little date issue and
This is case number CUP 24-07. Request for action, wholesale fireworks storage, commonly addressed as 9187 Yankee Road, Pleasanton, Kansas. Zoned as agricultural. Adjoining properties are zoned agricultural. The subject property is currently zoned as agricultural. The property utilizes a single ingress and egress. The application for CUP permits the applicant's desire to be authorized to operate a wholesale fireworks storage. All necessary notifications to surrounding landowners has been properly made by the United States Postal Service and publication of notice of hearing in the official county newspaper. So this was at the time I sent this out. I received a couple of phone calls and a couple of emails today. One of the phone calls was from Scott. I'm sure that during public comment, he will want to speak. The other phone calls were other surrounding properties that just basically asked some questions about what was going to happen on the property, where it was located, and they showed no concern to the situation. Staff sent the information to the request and received a couple emails back. The property owner said he did not have a problem with the request. The fireworks will be stored in shipping containers that will not be seen from the road, and they meet the ATF regulations for fireworks storage. They also meet and exceed all the setback requirements required by the ATF. I think if you see your map that it shows like it's 2,500 feet from any houses, or from the road. He will provide security cameras and alarm system. The ATF has a display fireworks regulation. This is not considered explosives. Therefore, this is the article that it falls under, 16-404 fireworks. The regulations list out vendors and other parties with a quantity of fireworks greater than 1,000 pounds have a conditional use permit and only be valid from June 27th through July 5th. Staff is asking for a variance to be given from the Board of Zoning Appeals to grant year-round storage. Findings: the use does fit with the character of the neighborhood, as all nearby properties are agricultural. The zoning of nearby properties is agricultural. The property is suitable for proposed use. The proposed use does not appear to detrimentally affect nearby properties. Property will remain currently zoned as agricultural and will continue to be used as farming, and no additional infrastructure is required. With proper conditions, the use will not detrimentally affect the public health, safety, and welfare, and would benefit the public by providing a boost to local economy. The request for the conditional use permit conforms to the Linn County current comprehensive plan. Staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit with recommendations and findings from Golden versus the City of Overland Park. Staff recommends a 5-year permit, which he's required to renew with ATF every 3 years. Inspection of property every year by a county official, and complies with ATF regulations.
Any questions for Darren on his report? We need to,
Is there a reason why we need to go 5 years instead of 3 years?
No, that was just a recommendation by me.
I mean, if the ATF is renewing it every 3 years, I think we should too.
Absolutely.
and I also, what role does the ATF versus the fire marshal have? Do we need to add that it would also comply with Kansas fire marshal requirements? Does that make a substantial?
So you can add to it whatever you want to add to it as a condition. That's your obligation to do. I would say that with it being ATF and to meet those regulations, I would say the state fire marshal or even the state's gonna say if he meets the ATF requirements, he's good.
That's my question. If one is effectively a superset
I think they would defer.
of the other,
Yeah.
then there's no sense, but I wasn't sure. So, I mean, Darren and I talked about this a little bit ahead of time, but the one curveball we have is that our existing, ink dried regulations do have hard dates wrapped around any CUP regarding the storage of fireworks, as we saw in the findings. 16404A says that the conditional use permit shall be valid only for the dates of June 27th through July 5th of any year. And just in general, we have two options when, something we may want to do. We haven't approved this yet, but something we may want to do doesn't jive with the existing regulations. We can either change the regulations, amend them, go through that whole process, public hearing, or a variance. And a variance is what Darren is recommending for us to do. that would require us changing our identity, adjourning as the Planning and Zoning Board, and reconvening as, what do we call it?
The Board of Zoning Appeals.
Board of Zoning Appeals, because that board has the authority to issue the variance to the regulations for the limited scope of this conditional use permit.
So,
For a
Very
mouthful.
good. Very
Yeah.
good.
so to say what Paul said in shorter terms, the Board of Zoning Appeals is the one that does all the variances. The variances are more for, property lines, things like that, of that nature. But it has one sentence in there that says if you're going to go or do something different than what the zoning regulations say, it can be done, but the Board of Zoning Appeals has to approve it.
Did
So, so for the moment, let's set this aside and let's give public comment a few minutes. And then we'll see if we have a motion. Ben,
Adjourn.
this is kind of catch-22. Because if we don't have a motion, there's nothing to put a variance on.
No, you want to give the variance before any motion's made, because you can't make a motion without the Board of Zoning Appeals saying that the variance has been granted.
That's fine.
Let's get it figured out.
It's just an order of operations thing. All right, so if you have comment on this, come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, and tell us where you're from and what your opinion or concerns are regarding this proposal. So,
Scott Lindell. I border him on the east side. And I guess one of the main concern is security. I mean, I've had cattle out on them, and I mean, I just walk right up to the darn thing. So, I mean,
so
what else to say other than that, you know?
so you're saying
It's fair.
the fence is not intact? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I know my side got taken out by dozers. We were putting a new fence in.
Okay.
And I mean, his side, we can just walk right through. I don't care if it's cattle or what it is, but you know, and as far as the fence, I mean, you can just walk right up the darn things.
Okay.
Talking about a fence on your side and then a fence on his side.
My right half has been taken out with dozers to cleaned up.
And that's going back in new.
Yes,
Okay. And then it's the left side or his
be
right.
his right side.
right.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's nothing there. We can walk right in, and
Sure.
I've got some that
but still,
go
it's
that too.
security. You know,
It's still what?
security.
So you're saying he's not gonna have a fence
Well,
on his half?
he's never had a fence. That's changed hands 5-6 times since I've been around. Nobody's done anything.
Well, nobody's ever run in stock in there. Tried.
What's that?
I don't think anybody's ever tried to run in stock in there, have they?
On my side, they have.
Well, your side, yeah, but
Yeah,
that property hasn't had any stock on it for some time, I didn't think.
sometime, yeah.
Yeah, about 20 years maybe.
So you're saying on security that somebody can just walk back there?
Yeah,
More or less.
walk right.
It has to go way to the back of the property.
Right,
It's way off the road.
and be able to somehow break into them, is what you're
Well, that and
possibly.
the front
insinuating.
side too. I mean, there's nothing there on the front side. The fence is laying down. Everybody's just been driving over it.
I think
It was
that's
my
the-
understanding from Elizabeth's question and his answer that there was an intent to have the fence, a perimeter fence. That's what I took from
Yes.
Elizabeth's question and your answer, that the intent was to have the property fenced. At least my,
And that it will be fenced before fireworks go in. That's my
that the perimeter of the property would be fenced. That was my understanding after the question and answer time with him. Was that not what you took away from his answering the question about fencing?
From previous experience, I've tried 3 years to get a fence in there. 3-4 years. Nothing.
Well, if there's, I understand, but if there are issues between property owners regarding proper fencing or the placement of fencing, that jurisdiction is really outside of our hands. And that would be handled with, I think it's called a fence review.
Still gets back to security.
Understood. So we can put as a part of this conditional use permit that the property be perimeter fenced.
Okay.
But we have no power to, after that, it just goes to whether or not it would be enforced by planning and zoning director. And all we can do is put it on the paper and say that the property needs to be perimeter fenced for security reasons.
Okay.
So would that, if that were included as a condition on the conditional use permit, would that satisfy your concerns as far as what we're able to do? As far as the planning and zoning committee, that would be the extent of what we're able to do, is say that the property for security purposes needs to be fenced. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And would that, as far as this committee, that would be the end of what we're able to do. If that doesn't happen, that would be a place where the fence review needs to come into play. That involves the commissioners going out on site and saying, yes, this hasn't happened. At that point, it goes beyond what I understand.
That's already been done 30, 60 days ago.
You're part of the fence on there, Scott, and is it already in?
No, dozers were just in there last 20, 30 days.
Oh, okay.
What about environmental runoff? Should we be concerned about that?
I mean, we should always be concerned about that. I think that the regulations from the ATF and the state would also have that concern, and that they're taken care of in the way that the containers are constructed, and the fact that they're inspected. That should take care of any weather issues. That stuff can't get wet, and if it can't get wet, it's not going to run off. If it's elevated so that there's no negative slope, which is also part of the ATF, my understanding, then I would expect any runoff, with a 9 high, 8 wide, 40-foot long shipping container, the footprint is minimal. If they're on a gravel pile, just my own personal opinion is that your runoff is not going to have changed much from what it had been if it were just the bare ground. But I'm not an engineer, and that's just my personal opinion.
From what I've been around that place all my life, most of that runoff goes to where? To the north?
I don't know which way it slopes.
I can't tell you from now.
What's north of that?
Pretty flat back in there where I saw his stuff.
Yeah. I know a lot of that runoff goes on north to that. What's that?
Cedar Crest is the only thing I know straight north.
Yeah, but it'd be west of Cedar Crest where that drains off into.
Holiday.
There you go.
There,
Yeah.
But there's nothing to run off, I don't think.
Okay. I get it.
What I've been studying on it anyway.
Mhm.
I think if you got a hole in one of them containers, you just have a lot of wet firecrackers.
I get it.
Darren, did you need to clarify my ramblings about the fence?
No, I've got something to add to that.
Okay. Is this regarding the fence review, or?
But regards all that.
Okay.
So on the inspections that I've asked for once a year, if he's in violation of any of the conditions that you've added to it, the permit can be revoked at any time
Right.
when he's in violation. So with a county official going out every year and doing an inspection. If there's any fence down at that time, they can come back in and ask planning and zoning to revoke the permit.
Is there a
Did you
grace
have a
period?
question? Oh,
Sure. Is there a grace period on any of that, Darren, where if they decide that they're thinking about revoking the permit, does he have any recourse? Can he come in and say, I'll have the fence repaired within so many days?
absolutely.
I assume there will.
Absolutely. And what will happen is I can't say who's going to be in my position at that time, but if it was me and I went out and done the inspection, I would give him 30 days to rectify the situation. If it wasn't rectified in 30 days, then I would put it on the agenda to be revoked by planning and zoning. So yes, he would have the opportunity to fix the problem.
Would, this, I would say, I don't know Kansas law as far as fence is concerned. I wouldn't want to put a burden on the landowner if we added a condition requiring a perimeter fence that, my understanding of Kansas law is that there's shared cost on shared border fencing. I don't know that that's true.
It has to be agreed.
So if we put, if we require through the conditional use permit, the landowner to have a perimeter fence, I would want that to also be not to supersede normal fencing etiquette, whatever the right word is.
And you can put that in. I can look
Does that
up,
make sense?
I can look up the state statute on fencing because there is a state statute on it. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can add that as a condition, whatever that statute is.
Legal fencing in Kansas is require fence.
Right.
There's certain things off the ground out there, that kind of off the ground.
But my question was the burden of the cost is typically shared.
Under most circumstances, there are exceptions. The portion of each fence that is shared, that is paid for by each property owner is determined by the fence.
Thank you.
Done some fence sharing before, and my neighbor asked me to go, if it'd be all right, just go ahead and doze the whole thing out, his half and my half, and place it, and I'd pay half the cost. I said, absolutely. So I got a very nice fence, and I didn't have to drive up the post.
Let's keep the comments directed at us to keep things straight, but
I suppose we could require fencing around the magazines only.
that would be another alternative, and that would certainly address the security issue. I mean, if it were my tens of thousands of dollars in a shipping container, I would want to do everything necessary to
Yeah, that's, as I think.
keep people from bolt cutting their way in, which, yes,
Generally, fire departments don't like that scenario. Because it confines them. You're that magazine between the fence.
you either got to take the whole thing down or you're stuck between a wall and a burning container that's going off like a chimney.
Probably the logistics of coming in and loading out and bringing in new containers. The time might be a little bit more difficult with that smaller fenced-in area.
Okay. So, back to your comments, if we were to add to the conditional use permit a requirement for fencing, as we've discussed, would that satisfy your concerns as far as just? Right, our capacity to put down the regulations is fairly limited, so if we have that, in black and white on paper, as far as what the county has their ability to enforce in their yearly inspection, it would include an intact fence. Does that address your concerns as far as the fence line that you would be sharing with this property? I'm just concerned about the property line situation, and does putting this as a condition on the conditional use permit satisfy that? The rest of the requirements are really going to be shouldered by the ATF and the fire marshal as far as how secure those containers need to be. By saying a perimeter fence, that would include all the boundaries of his property, which I presume would include the road. And I don't know what else to do as far as trying to address your concerns and make a reasonable permit for.
Well, I thought, Phil, didn't you earlier when you were speaking that you were making plans to do something with the front anyway?
Yes, but as soon as the Department of Business Combine,
There you go.
we'll be putting up a
What are you gonna call a perimeter fence?
What's that?
What are you gonna call a perimeter fence? Is it gonna be 1 wire, 4 wires, 9 wires, chain link
I think
fence?
that's where we just defer to the state. Darren said we could include the state regulation reference in the condition and the conditional use. So it would be there something along the lines of that the landowner will provide or will construct or whatever a perimeter fence as per Kansas statute, blah, 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 whatever that is. And assuming Gary's comment is accurate.
It makes no sense to me.
Okay.
So basically, the state requires 3 rows of barbed wire. That's the minimum regulation. And then
Wire
I
fence.
did not know that.
Well, I think we've done the best we can as far as addressing this. And I think what we need to do right now is go ahead and adjourn as the Planning and Zoning Board, reconvene as Board of Appeals, get our language for the date situation. Then we'll come back as Planning and Zoning, and we can entertain motions for either accepting or rejecting this application with the conditions that we've discussed. And we'll go through the conditions again to make sure we're all clear. Everybody copacetic with moving forward like that? All right. This meeting is adjourned as Planning and Zoning, and we reconvene as Board of Zoning Appeals. Is that right? So if you feel like you have a different identity, you have a different identity. It just
Get
happens.
double pay.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, your pay got doubled, your mileage.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So, staff asked for a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals to grant year-round storage versus June 27th through July 5th of any year.
So moved.
I'll second.
Just say it again.
Staff is asking for a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals to grant year-round storage versus what the regulations read, June 27th through July 5th of any year.
a motion to accept
All right, it's been moved.
Darren's recommendation.
We got it.
You got it.
He moved and she seconded. So it's been moved and seconded that we add a variance for this conditional use permit CUP 24-07 to grant year-round storage of fireworks in contrast to the current regulations, which read June 27th through July 5th of any year. We moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah. Shouldn't we have the ATF and the stuff in that, with that?
No, it will go into the conditional use permit. The only thing that Board of Zoning Appeals can do is grant the variance.
Okay, that's, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor of adopting this variance, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. So this meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned, and we reconvene as the Planning and Zoning Committee. Okay, we're back. So let's list out the current conditions that we've discussed. We talked about just matching the 3 years instead of the 5 years on Darren's findings. We still have the county inspecting the property every year to make sure that we're in compliance with the conditional use permit. Darren also had that it would comply with ATF regulations. And what language do we want for the fence?
That the entire perimeter of the property needs to be fenced. Is it must or shall?
Or maintain.
The property owner will maintain a fence to the standards of the is it the fencing? Or the
State
state
rules, regulations.
State statute. And that will be
And the inspection of the fence will happen along with the inspection.
What's that?
That probably was
that would go without saying because it's part of the conditional use permit.
Okay.
So I have that the landowner shall maintain a fence, the entire perimeter. I wrote it down 2 different ways. Say what you said again.
The entire perimeter shall be maintained or with
State
shall
statute
be
regulations.
fenced and maintained.
Fenced
Be maintained.
and maintained
Certain just property.
in compliance with state statute. Darren will fill in the blank. So I have 4 conditions. 3-year inspection cycle, inspected by the county every year. Oh, the CUP will be renewed every 3 years. Inspected by the county every year, comply with ATF regulations, and the entire perimeter shall be fenced and maintained in compliance with state statutes.
Also, that the property owner will provide a key to the fire department.
So that'd be 5. Key to fire. All right.
I have a question, Paul.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we require ATF and Kansas Fire Marshal, so we're not leaving anything up to assumption?
That's fine. That's why I asked Darren earlier. And I mean, if you want to just belt and suspenders, it's not going to hurt anything.
Chairman, we have no objection to that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Um, So we could add to number 3, State Fire Marshal. So we have Darren's findings and 5 conditions. 3-year renewal, inspection by the county every year, ATF State Fire Marshal compliance, perimeter fence, according to state statutes. And the property owner will provide the county fire department key to access to the gate. And the variance, which I don't know how that falls into all that, but
You don't have to worry about the variance.
Okay.
The variance is already taken care of.
It's done, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And actually, the Board of Zoning Appeals has the final say on that. I don't even have to present it to the commissioners.
okay. So, Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the conditional use permit with all conditions mentioned previously.
So,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the CUP with the conditions, the 5 conditions we've just discussed. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, CUP passes unanimously.
looks good here.
We do have some housekeeping. Do you have something for us?
No, go ahead.
We do have some housekeeping to kind of do some prep work for next month, just to give you a heads up, because January is a bit of a special meeting. I have some notes. So this is just reminder, general discussion, interrupt me, ask questions. I'm just spouting off a bunch of stuff. Thank you. It's good to see you, Gary. It's been brought to our attention that there may be some concerns about the lack of regulations for data centers.
Say that again, lack of,
Data centers, large, they're building them. Thank you. Appreciate your input. They're building them like crazy up north. And Job, if he would be here, could give you firsthand stories about how big they are and different things. I think the concern is getting caught off guard. What's that? Well, it's basically a big warehouse full of computers.
Oh,
So
data center.
you
I'm
have
with you. Okay. I know.
Amazon, Google, and all those folks are building them all over the world, and they're massive. They consume a lot of electricity. On the outside, it pretty much looks like a giant warehouse. On the inside, they're literally just row after row of computers. But they do consume a lot of resources, and we just don't want to be caught off guard. Because when you have wide open spaces, they are, you're a target for building something big. So I checked with Darren, and, we don't need the commissioners or anybody to say, push the go button or anything. We can just do some research. I don't know how you want to proceed or what you might want to do, or if everybody agrees that we need to do something, but it would take some research and drafting some stuff up and finding out what's going on in other places. We could just set aside part of a meeting to do that, and people could gather stuff on their own, and we could just workshop it. But I'm just throwing that out there. We got the email, got the message. Darren dropped in some sample from Virginia in our folders, if you want to read through that. So the big question for me was, do the commissioners need to take the initiatives to turn us loose, or can we just do something because we've become aware of a concern? And the answer is the latter. We can do something because we've become aware of a concern. So, in the next, month or so, we can take some action and see how we want to proceed with that. Just I may not even be chairman after the next meeting, so I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm just saying we can take the initiative. That's my point. And we can do the research and pool our resources and come up with a plan. Some other housekeeping. Our first meeting in January, according to our bylaws, we elect new officers. We are to review the bylaws. And if you remember, we did review the bylaws last year and we made changes last year, but because of all the turmoil regarding having legal counsel, we weren't able to get those changes in our bylaws kind of reviewed. And I think we're probably still in the same boat. So our current bylaws are the old ones.
As far as the changes, I have an avenue now that I can probably get them reviewed by an attorney. I can send them to Mark Hagan and have him review them.
Okay. Well, since we're so close, what we should probably do is just do it again, get the changes that we proposed
Right.
last time. And then after our January meeting, get those to you and get them reviewed so that we can get them put in place. Because it also had the Zoom policy and had some absentee changes and some other changes that just, the current bylaws were written in 1995, just like the regulations, and they need some updating. So that needs to be done. The review of the comprehensive plan is an annual thing. We mentioned multiple times that given the full discussion on the solar regulations, that the comprehensive plan needed updated in that regard. And this is the time to start that conversation. If we want to make changes along those lines, if we feel like the comprehensive plan is out of sync with the current regulations, those adjustments need to be discussed, proposed, then there would be a public hearing and the whole process has to be gone through. But if we're concerned that the comprehensive plan and the regulations are out of sync, the beginning in our, I don't think we can accomplish it in one meeting. Maybe we can, but the January meeting is the time that that's supposed to come up. And then election of new officers. The chairman and the co-chairman are only for a year. The co-chairman can be reelected infinitely. The chairman can only serve 2 consecutive terms, but they have to be reelected. If you ask me today, I'm probably on the fence on whether or not I would want to continue being chairman. It's not that it's been bad. It's been, a wild ride, but it's been fine. My personal world has gotten a little chaotic in the last few months. Having one less thing to concern me would probably be better. But all that has to happen in January.
So all that has to happen except for the discussion on the data centers. We can do that in January. We do that when.
Right. No, we don't, there's no time frame on that. Mostly just, there could be a time frame as far as if we wanted to include it in the discussion of the comprehensive plan.
And that discussion doesn't have to finish in January. I mean, it can start in January.
I don't even think it's practical to finish it.
Yeah. I mean, you may decide to want to go through the whole thing, which may take several months to do. But it's prompted in our bylaws that the discussion starts in January.
Right.
Required or new officers and bylaws.
Yeah, well, yeah, at least review the bylaws.
Yeah.
And I do think some changes are in order, like we already discussed, 9 months ago. So all of that is just heads up. So that our January meeting agenda is, doesn't, catch us off guard. That's all we got. Anybody else have any comments, concerns, complaints?
I think we need to do research on the data centers and come back and discuss it as a group. Just not sure when, with January being so busy.
Yeah, I don't think that conversation can happen in January. I'm not interested in a 4-hour meeting.
And if you want to hold a workshop, we can do a workshop on a separate day and start it at 6.
Yeah,
I think it'll take us a couple months to get them with all
Just
of
gather
getting the information and getting it gathered up and to make, you're not gonna find it. It's gonna take some digging.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a hidden deal.
It is.
I mean,
It is.
they really aren't wanting the public to know much about it.
They've got a big footprint, but they stay kind of hidden.
Yeah.
And they're pretty good about hiding out. I drove by one for weeks in Des Moines. Didn't know what it was. Thought it was Walmart shipping center or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think we need to, balance out economic development and the impact. I think that the hidden aspect of them is just that there's such a infrastructure draw on power, and
Yeah.
they generate tons of heat, so they got to be air conditioning, and they're just a different animal, even though they look like a metal building sitting out there in the middle of a field somewhere, big metal building. Anyhow, if nothing else, then we'll call this meeting adjourned, and we'll see you in January. Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and there is an item on the agenda for January.
Just regular business type thing.
Yep.
Can't say.
No, it's a clubhouse at Tanglewood.
Donnie, I gotta get your phone. We could have done it together.
Yep.
We